Naval arms races. Few competitions in history create such a collision of ambition, strategy, and economic strain. Nations, from the Spanish Empire to the British Empire, sought dominance on the seas, believing their fleets would secure them power, wealth, and global influence. But what if we told you that chasing naval supremacy, time and time again, has been a trap, one that bankrupts empires, destabilizes economies, and leaves nations more vulnerable than before? In this video, we'll uncover 8 deadly patterns in naval arms races that led to the ruin of mighty empires. Let's dive in. Pattern 1. The obsession with bigger is always better. Many empires equated the size and scale of their fleets with power. The British Empire continually built massive battleships to outpace rivals like Germany in the early 20th century. But bigger ships often meant exponential increases in costs. Materials, labor, and maintenance skyrocketed. Meanwhile, these colossal investments were vulnerable to rapid technological innovations. Think of dreadnoughts. Once revolutionary, they became obsolete within years. Pouring resources into size rather than adaptability leaves empires struggling to fund increasingly impractical forces. Pattern 2. Ignoring economic constraints until it's too late. Some nations stretch their economies thin just to keep up with competitors. Take Spain in the 16th century, which poured its wealth into fleets like the ill-fated Spanish Armada. While rival powers like England were bolstering their defenses, Spain's resource-heavy fleet ended in disaster, draining its economy. Naval competition consistently encourages empires to overstretch financially, prioritizing military spending over economic sustainability, a recurring recipe for collapse. Pattern 3. Reactive spending promotes instability. Naval arms races thrive on fear, with leaders reacting to perceived threats rather than strategizing. When Germany built its high seas fleet to challenge Britain in the early 1900s, Britain responded by building even larger fleets. Neither nation planned for the long term, or considered the economic strain these efforts would cause. The reactive nature of arms races creates cycles of panic-driven spending, locking empires into financially destructive paths without consideration for a broader strategy. Pattern 4. The pursuit of prestige over practicality. Let's talk about image. Empires often saw naval dominance as the ultimate status symbol. Imperial Japan in the 20th century wanted to prove it could compete with Western powers, so it invested heavily in fleets of carriers and battleships. Yet, prestige-driven investments ignore real vulnerabilities. Japan's economy collapsed under the weight of war expenses in World War II. Naval races aren't about what an empire can sustain. They often become about looking powerful, which leads to devastating overspending. Pattern 5. Technological overreach that outpaces strategy. As technology evolves, empires tend to invest heavily in risky, unproven innovations to gain an edge. During the Cold War, both the U.S. and Soviet Union spent billions on advanced submarines and missile systems to maintain strategic naval superiority. But following this path often leads nations into logistical and financial chaos. Sunk costs in untested systems, unexpected maintenance challenges, and, most importantly, gaps in strategic thinking. Technology without careful planning becomes a burden. Pattern 6. Weaponizing resources leads to overdependence. Empires frequently pull too hard on natural resources in their quest for naval supremacy. The Ottoman Empire expanded its fleets dramatically during the 16th century, pulling resources from its territories to fund campaigns in the Mediterranean. But naval expansion left those territories strained. Resource dependency destabilized the empire's economy over the long term, a pattern mirrored by other powers that drove their own industries into exhaustion to feed endless naval growth. Pattern 7. Focusing on naval power at the expense of everything else. Balanced competition is often ignored in naval races, as empires prioritize fleets over the rest of their military or infrastructure. For example, Italy, under Mussolini, spent heavily to bolster its navy, but neglected its army and air force. Eventually, this imbalance came to haunt the nation during World War II, when it failed to defend itself adequately on other fronts. Naval power alone is almost never enough to sustain an empire. It must work in harmony with all aspects of defense and economy. Pattern 8. Naval arms races escalate wars and drain nations even further. History shows that naval arms races often lead directly to conflict. The Anglo-German naval race, for instance, fueled tensions that contributed to the outbreak of World War I. Once war begins, the cost of sustaining naval operations explodes. Britain spent vast sums maintaining its blockade against Germany, money that could have been spent on rebuilding its economy or addressing domestic concerns. Wars driven by naval races often leave empires weakened, destabilized, and ripe for collapse. The financial fallout: why naval arms races are a trap. So, why do empires fall for this trap again and again? Because naval superiority seems synonymous with dominance. It's easy to forget that economic health, infrastructure, and sustainability are part of the foundation of power. Naval arms races create short-term illusions of strength, but long-term vulnerabilities. From Spain to Britain, Germany to Japan, the downfall of empires often starts at sea, not in battle, but on the balance sheet. Lessons learned today. The deadly patterns of naval arms races aren't confined to the past. Even today, nations engage in costly military competitions, sinking billions into fleets, submarines, and naval technology. Are they learning from history or repeating it? The lesson is clear. Empires grow not by dominating ocean, but by building sustainable, balanced foundations. Naval ambition is a tempting path, but it can bankrupt nations or weaken them for decades to come if they don't tread carefully. What's next for global powers? Will modern nations avoid the traps of history, or are we already sailing toward the next dangerous naval arms race? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Can nations ever really escape this cycle? And if you found these lessons from history eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more insights into how the past shapes our future. Thank you for watching.